Yeah, just oh shit!
You didn't manage to get that in there, didn't you?
That
Change.
was censored, wasn't it?
Yep.
Where's that button? Go
what?
back time.
Focus.
Good. I haven't even had a drink yet, so we're off to a good start. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Aussie Craft Distillers Shooting the Shit. We are joined tonight by Eddie of where are we? Cape Byron Distillery up in northern New South Wales. Eddie, hi.
Hello, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. And
in the White Room.
Yeah, in the White Room. I tell you what, it's a bit different to the man cave setup. I was saying before, I've got absolute man cave envy looking at you guys. It's a bit bland in here. I've got whiskey, but
that's
just stuck in the office at home.
Whiskey is all that matters.
Yeah, two bottles on the shelf is a good start to it.
Yeah, they're all empty. That's a problem. Yeah.
You've got to start somewhere. You've got to start somewhere.
Most of these are full of tea.
Oh, good. Yeah. It's all.
Oh, you'd be lucky.
It's all about perception, right?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%. Well, I guess where do we normally start? We start with what's in your glass. Drinking. Let's start at your end. What are you drinking tonight?
So I'm drinking a little Aussie single malt. I was saying before, part of I think the industry we get to be in is, when we get together, we get to explore how much bloody incredible Aussie whiskey is getting made around the country. And Crafty Mate, I think you might be aware of this one, maybe even had it once or twice. I am too.
Yeah.
I was actually doing with the lead up to today, I was doing a tasting with some of the crew in the distillery today, and it's just sensational. I was saying before, it's just like the Aussie chocolate milkshake of a whiskey. It's just, I love it. Big and chocolatey, and not even sure of what the sort of mash build of the profile is in there, but one bloody tasty whiskey.
Funny enough, there is some chocolate malt.
There you go.
Only a little bit, though.
Only a little bit.
Only a little. Yeah.
Only need a little. Right. What are we drinking?
Well, we're spoiled for choice.
Yeah. You've just been away. You did a bit of a road trip.
I've picked up a few things along the way. I mean, of course, I think we should just start with a little tipple, of course, of the Cape Byron.
The OG.
Yeah. Makes sense.
It would be rude, and that's a very good place to start.
Cheers.
So I'll pour out one of them. But then I do have a few others that I wanted to bring out today as well. I was lucky enough to receive one of these.
Oh, you're kidding me. Brilliant.
Which is, I mean, it's got my initials on it.
Yeah.
So it was made specifically for me.
Is that if you squint hard enough, you get your initials out of it? Is that once you've consumed half the bottle, you get your initials come out?
Luke McCallum, it works. It does. It says it on the bottle there. But this is the Le Américain.
I love that name.
American. I'm murdering it.
I tell you what, they're making some great whiskey. You go to the crew at Whiskey and Ailment. Actually, that's where I first tried King Lake. And incredible whiskey bars around the country. They get an opportunity to taste so many, and they're just there's a few distilleries that they're really, really engaged with and loving what's coming out, and that's one. And the releases, I haven't tried too many across the spectrum, but the ones I've tasted have just been brilliant.
Well, we're actually going to be having them on the 7th of December.
Yep.
Great.
They'll be joining us on the podcast. So
if they want to send some whiskey to Byron Bay, I'll be happy to drink some and watch along,
It's a tough job, isn't it? But I mean,
someone's got to do it.
Absolutely. There you go, Lord Smeg, fantastic distillery to visit as well. Going back to yours, that's not a bad drop.
Not a bad one.
It's not a bad drop. It's lovely and oily and vanilla-y. Definitely along the bourbon. It's a bourbon barrel, that one, isn't it?
You've got it. So
that's to me that's just an everyday drinking whiskey. It's lovely. Yeah. I don't need to have a special occasion to drink that. I'm happy to drink it and buy another bottle
every day.
Yeah, every day is a good day to be drinking whiskey. No, that's kind of what we set out. The original that you guys have got there that's our flagship. When I say flagship, we're not a huge distillery, but this is something we want to keep consistent as a release. And you'll actually see, I don't know, do you know what batch code you've got there? Does it say?
Batch 3.
Brilliant. So that was the one we made. We actually won a big award at the SIP Awards. We picked up best Australian whiskey, which was pretty incredible. In the first year, like we said, we've got an incredible industry that we're a part of here, and some exceptional single malt getting made. But the original for us was really the style of whiskey that we intended to make when we set out, and I'll just launch into it anyway. For the style of spirit where we wanted to create, there's a fair bit of legacy from Jim McEwen, who's sort of part owner of the business and trained and mentored by. And for us, there you go. I think we've got to do a book plug later on, maybe even a chapter reading, Crafty. What do you reckon? There's a great chapter on Cape Byron Distillery. I'd recommend.
But you can buy your copy of The Story of Jim McEwen off our website, shootingtheshit.com.au.
Meanwhile,
sorry.
So the original was literally the style of whiskey we wanted to set out. Our yeast structures, we want all of that. Jim used to search for lychee, kiwi, peach, pear, classic sort of fruit esters and characters, and our sort of new make was such similar along those lines, but it had a little bit more of a tropical backbone to it. Really that sort of pear and syrup, almost sort of green mango character. And we're maturing and distilling whiskey in Byron Bay. We've got a hell of a climate to be doing that with. So our wood policy, we really want to make sure that we're not really getting over extraction. And that's where bourbon cask for us in our climate, high humidity, really good temperatures and high temperatures. We have a winter, but maybe we might wear jeans and maybe a flanny if we're lucky. So for us, we're not concerned about the lows of the temperature; it's the highs. So we actually take the heat curves out, and for us, that elegant, new make that we're making and beautiful and fruity in maturing in ex-bourbon full format casks, it's just a beautiful, beautiful combination. And we're very lucky with our temperature and climate. We get to that level of maturation a lot quicker. Jim, over in Scotland and somewhere like Brook, that would take about 7 to 8 years to get to that level. Right. For us, we're reaching that, between 3.5 to 4 years, which is, something that I can tell you, it's a great thing. Not great for the amount of loss you get on your casks, but for us, it's just really helps. So I'm glad you guys enjoy it.
Yeah, Eddie, just go back to that moment. Just cast your mind back when you and Jim were on your still, and it was the first distillation of the spirit came off. So you really had no idea how it was going to taste until that actual moment. What was the experience like, and what was Jim's feedback? Was it like yep, I knew that's how it would come out, or there's a few surprises there?
It's funny. There's I think the moment in this, the journey of what we've been doing at the distillery, the ones that are the most special, is the moment when that spirit is born. and that first spirit is born. And it's, you know, Jim taught me about these, and it was these poignant moments. I remember him telling me the story of Brook. You know, I think it was back in 2000 when he had the stills running again, and the spirit ran for the first time. And it's more than just spirit running. You know, it's like a sign, a beacon of hope. You know, it's you know, this distillery is back to life, and this spirit is the hope that's going to, you know, bring that along. And for us, like, there's two of those moments. And firstly is when we distilled our first ever Brookie's dry gin. And that was back in 2016 in November, and we were still finishing off the distillery, and it was just Jim and I and the family. We'd filled the still the night before with our botanicals and let it steep, and we started the distillation late into the evening, and we were going to run it through the night. And it was the moment. It was just like, you know, as the still started to run. And actually, when we first looked at each other, and Jim and I, we didn't talk for that whole time. You know, as soon as the spirit started to run, and at first it started coming out cloudy, and because we use native ginger stem in our basket as one of the final botanicals coming through our line arm, and we waited, and, you know, half an hour, you know, and every sort of 5-10 minutes we're going back to it, and there was this moment when you find, you know, that cut and that spirit, and the best way to describe it, if you haven't been on a still run and see that, it's like on a cloudy sort of day, the clouds part and the sun comes through. You know, that's what you pick up on the nose. You know, when you get those, you know, for us, we get this beautiful kind of fruit sweetness that comes through. The aniseed drops down, and it's just almost this candied orange will come through, candied orange and raspberry, and that's kind of a distinct note where we made that cut. And you know, the emotion in it. It was tears of elation. It was, you know, we were in tears, and it was such a beautiful moment. And it's like, it's literally that child is born. And I suppose I've had 3 of those now. We've had our first baby boy 4 months ago, little Jude. So slightly different spirit to. I'm not going to say, you know, I'm not going to bring it in exactly the same. But the whiskey was something. So we only started our whiskey journey, did our first spirit cut in February 2019. And it was something Jim and I, we've been talking about. Like when we actually started, a lot of people always ask me, they're going, "Oh, mate, we know your story. You must have been doing this just to get to whiskey." And that simply wasn't the case. We actually, you know, we had an idea, maybe we might get to whiskey. It'd be a nice thing and an idea. But we were all things gin focused, you know, because we've been regenerating rainforest, and our story that our spirit tells is from our family and our farm and the work we've done in the rainforest. We get to use the vehicle of gin through our botanicals to kind of tell that. We were like, you know, like 2 kids in a candy shop. And ever since then, you know, we'd be talking all the time, and, you know, you plant these seeds and this idea, and, you know, imagine what it would be like to not only just distill but mature whiskey in Byron Bay, you know, the furthest place from Scotland, you know, the furthest place from the world of whiskey that Jim knows. So spirit wise, we kind of, you know, look, I think with working with Jim, it helps that we have such knowledge of a base to start with. So we knew the yeast structures and the type of malt we were going to be using, but we also didn't want to be a Scottish version of Australian whiskey or something like that. We wanted to be uniquely and distinctively us. So knowing the flavor profiles, and we worked with actually the guy, one of the founders of Stonerwood, Brad Rogers, and he's kind of like the guy that created Pacific Ale. Especially being a local, you know, my blood bleeds Pacific Ale most of the time. But, you know, we worked on some traditional yeast structures, but also a few others that hadn't been used, that had been used in the world of brewing. So it's just kind of this hybrid approach to it. So we settled on an Australian pale malt, same malt that's used in Pacific Ale as well. And a traditional Scottish spirit yeast, and then an ale yeast that actually brings us that ester profile. And we went through 8 different yeast trials, and it was similar. I remember it was that moment again. It was Jim and I and Pablo, our distiller. He runs our, I don't get to be on the stills constantly. I'm sort of spinning plates is what I do. And it was that same incredible moment, all the work and all the time you've gone into it, but you don't know until your still runs, until you've done that work. The washer, fermented through well, we were happy with it. And, the first ever run you actually, that's not really where you get your true middle cut. You get a glimpse of it, but that first run is to bring up your 4 shots and fangs. We needed to create that seed stock, but we knew from that first run we were going to get a glimpse into that spirit. And similar again, running out the heads, running the 4 shots off, and similar. We were nosing, and oh man, it was just sensational. The beauty of it. It's the same spirit that comes off the still, and when we make the cuts today is what we first started back then.
You haven't evolved it. You haven't had to evolve it at all. You haven't tweaked and changed. You were that set on it from day dot that it worked.
Yeah.
Wow.
And all of that, you get this classic, as a kid growing up, you used to get the Goulburn Valley, fruit snacks, and for me, you get that sort of pear and syrup character. You're going to get that sort of peach and lychee, and we get these really quite incredible, soft tropical notes coming through. Beautiful malt character as well.
So you attribute those fruitier notes to the ale yeast, do you think, or what do you attribute that to?
It's those notes are found in a classic Scottish spirit yeast, but definitely that ale yeast, and that starts off. It sort of that burns out the quickest. As the alcohol starts to get created. So the best way to talk about it is the ale yeast starts off and has this huge burst of flavor and a lot of ester profile in that quick first part of the ferment, and then about halfway through that dies out, and then the spirit yeast takes the baton and just keeps running with it, and pushes it all the way through. But yeah, it was a big one for us, but also we were very, very sure we didn't want to make it overly sort of complex or overly sort of powered from various fruit esters. So it's that real balance, like a great single malt should be, of those incredible, fruit esters and profiles balanced in with a really great malt.
So for those of us who don't know, or those who don't know, how did the relationship between you and Jim come about? Give us a little bit of background.
Too many drinks. It was pretty much, imagine you three there, but we drank all the whiskey on the back shelf, and then we thought, you know what, we've got an idea.
It took that long. It took that many whiskeys to come up with an idea. It
was a 3-day affair. You wouldn't believe it. We went from one end of the bar to the other. I've sort of been in the spirit industry for a while. I'll sort of, tell you the story of how that all came to be. So I grew up here in Byron Bay. Our family, we're farmers. We farm macadamias, and what we're really passionate about is regenerating rainforest. And that was kind of my upbringing. Folks started a food business, and from an early age, I was putting, labels on bags, and, Will and I, our beds were propped up with muesli boxes, and we'd be at the markets every weekend. And that was just family life for us. And we loved it. Very much the folks wanted us to grow up connected to nature and having just an understanding of it. So it was a really kind of a great place to start. So like any 18-year-old that grows up, you got to leave home. And I moved up to Brisbane and started working in bars. And I was a glassy at the Stocky. I remember I was actually just talking to a few friends of mine. We used to work together. And all of a sudden, I'd be picking up glasses out of the troughs, and I'm going, how do you become one of these bartenders? These people look like gods, you know. They don't have to go swimming around for glasses in toilets. And I was like, right, first step, become a bartender. And I remember early on, I went to a first training, and someone was talking about, I can't even remember, maybe it was a vodka or a gin, and they're telling these tales and these stories, and I was just growing up kind of connected to where food and product comes from. I'm just a sucker for a story, and to hear about this global world of spirits and how they're made, and I was just sort of infatuated with it. So I had a bit of a career as a bartender and worked in some great cocktail bars and really kind of found my creativity there. But I got a gig as an ambassador pretty early on. Maybe I just love booze and chatting about booze. So maybe it was the ultimate gig. I can't believe I got paid for it. I didn't get paid much.
They're the
still
best
looking
one.
for a few paychecks. But no, I was an ambassador, and the first products I got to talk about with great distilleries like Hayman's Gin or Buffalo Trace, from Kentucky, and also Brook and the Botanist Gin. And when I first learnt to talk about, I had to get up in front of customers and bartenders and educate them. Like I was the guy that had the knowledge. And so I learned from reading everything that Jim wrote about Brook and every video where he talked about it. And for me, it was just such an instant understanding of what makes that product special. When he talked about, Brook, he didn't talk about, I'm going to tell you the science behind this and, yada, yada, yada. He's like, hey, I'm going to introduce you to the farmer that grows the barley. I'm going to, let you know the story about how this distillery has brought life back to the people of Islay. How we're employing disabled people on the island, and the hope, the spirit that the Botanist Gin, and it's literally captured from the lands of Islay. And for me, I could tell that story quite well. I could, it's just kind of I could tell, I suppose, quite true. And then anyway, fast forward, I was in a career with a company called South Trade, and from sales and marketing, and then I was looking after a few brands, and one of which was Brook and the Botanist Gin, and I got to put a tour on for this legendary distiller, Jim McEwen, and I was sort of fanboy number one. Like, imagine being a boxer and being able to put on a tour for like Muhammad Ali. It's that level of. I still remember I was working late in the office the day he arrived. He was staying at I think the Hilton in Sydney, and he called me. And the receptionist, she was there. She's like, "Oh, Eddie, Jim's on the phone for you." And I was like, "Oh shit," And anyway, so I made sure created this legendary tour for the man. So we did 22 shows around the country. Sellout shows, classic, proper rock star stuff, like for the man he should be, piped into every show, and people packed into auditoriums, 100 people plus, just to listen to the man talk about whiskey and taste his incredible whiskeys. And it was during that tour that we just formed this great friendship. We used to travel around all of Australia in this short time, and we'd sit together on planes, and he'd ask me about, where I'm from, and my family is such a true family values man. And I told him, what I've told you guys about our farm and kind of what gets us excited. And I'll tell you the story. We were on our way. I can't remember where it was. If we were on our way to Brisbane, and it was about halfway through the leg. And Jim is this big believer in this idea or sense of karma. Or even serendipity. And he said to me, turned to me, and maybe we did have a few whiskeys by this stage. He said, Eddie, I truly believe we were meant to meet, and we're going to start a distillery together. And I remember I was still pinching myself, and I got off the phone and I said to the folks, hey, by the way, we had this weird ideas of doing other businesses. I said, hey, make sure you're coming to Tasmania for the last leg. We're starting a distillery. Boop, and they were there. Wow. And the rest has been history. It's more than just I still pinch myself to know I get to work with him, and him being so connected to what we do. But more than that is just to call him a family friend. The folks are over there with them on Isla just the other week, and and they're just thick as thieves. They're just like, my old man's a cheeky bugger, and those two together, you can't get a word in. It's just absolute abuse the whole time. It's world-class abuse.
So you were saying you spin plates. So what do you do? Talk about the various plates that you spin in, Eddie.
That's a great question, Crafty. What do? I ask myself that when I turn up to work every day. No, is the business has evolved. So we've now got about sort of 30 odd folk in the business, and in the distillery, which is incredible. So humbled and proud, and we got the most amazing people working with us. So from the distillers side, we've got a great distilling team. So from my side, I like, the thing I love is creativity and creating the product. So I'm still heavily involved in the actual liquid development and production. And from all of our spirits that we create, that's sort of a big part of what I still do and work towards. I'd love to spend more of that time, on a day-to-day basis, but it's more so, steering the ship, if you will. So, we've also got our team in marketing and our sales and distribution, and from accounts and finance and what we do from a cellar door and sort of ecotourism side of things. So, you can kind of get that image of spinning the plate. So as sort of, if you will, the technical title is CEO, but I prefer chief plate spinner. I think I'm going to change my title to that. But it's really kind of,
looks very cool on a business card when you have something other than CEO.
I think chief plate spinner. I'm going to change that from tomorrow.
Absolutely.
CPS.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the button presser. You're the man in the hat.
Yeah, man in the hat.
And
man in the hat.
I don't think we actually include you in anything.
No, we don't.
You're there.
You're just you can just be the guy.
He's just
He's just the wheel in the middle.
I coined the term craft spirits artists because a lot of what we do is artistic.
Yeah.
From conceptual to execution on design and how it's promoted and the actual product itself. And that's one thing about Australian spirits. You look at the diversity of products and the way people are going and deep diving into different directions and making various products, and you go, wow, it's incredible, really, isn't it, Eddie?
Yeah. Oh, mate, it's just incredible. Like when we started, 2016, we were, I think we were probably about 80 distilleries operating in Australia then. And you look at, since we've started to the industry that exists today, and also it is just incredible.
More
than 400-500. I can't keep up, But to your point, Crafty, it's people taking, like, the level of innovation is just bonkers, and in a good way, And I think the other thing is the level of quality, especially for Australian spirits, is just so high. If you're now coming in and starting a distillery or starting to produce products, it's not just creating good spirits. It's not creating great spirits. You've got to be exceptional just to be amongst the sort of the playing field. And that's just, a testament, I think, to the quality of the industry. But also, like, what are we? Our whiskey industry in Australia, really, from when Bill really started the birth of craft whiskey again, well, that's only 30 years old. And that's the exciting thing. We've got we even talk about in what we do is we get to write our own chapters. We get to create our own new traditions, our own sense of traditions. And Australian whiskey is in such a young, youthful phase. You go to Scotland or to Ireland or even Japan and Japan's even young in comparison. Jim came from when he was 12 years or 14 years old. He was kicking barrels as an apprentice cooper at Bowmore. you know, and you know, there is hundreds of years of hundreds and hundreds of years, you know. I think at Brook the mash tun that they're still using was like created in like 1890. You know, Victorian age equipment, you know, and that's just there's been such tradition and history that's gone before, and I think that's the exciting thing about what the future looks like. For you look at the quality and caliber of what's getting produced, but also different distilleries going in different directions, and man, like every year it gets more exciting. But I can't wait for that fast forward moment, sitting here 5 or even 10 years time to look at what Australian, you know, spirits, but in particular, you know, we're here chatting and got whiskey in our glasses, what whiskey's going to be like, but also the level of knowledge and kind of an international stamp and recognition of Australian whiskey. It's it's a bloody exciting time.
So what do you think so obviously the Australian climate makes it very easy for us to accelerate that process, where something takes sort of 7 to 10 years to become okay product in Scotland, we can do that in 2, in some cases, in 4, in most cases. Do you think that puts us on an accelerated trajectory to sort of overtake Scotland at any point in terms of being the
I don't know if we'd ever overtake, you know. I think when you look at it and to put things in perspective, I remember when they boast about it at a great distillery called Edredor when I was there, and they claim that they are the smallest distillery in Scotland. Absolute smallest. Now this was going back when years and years and years ago, but still their level of output, you know, they're still making 400,000 litres a year. You know, that is the smallest distillery in Scotland. There is, you know, kind of like on par with, we've obviously got some beasts now, but it's a different stage, and that has come from years and years and years, but also the industry and the support and the growth of it. So I think Australian distilleries are at this bloody exciting time that we're heading towards there. You know, we've got levels from, you know, small boutique to medium and even some large, and you need all of those. And we're going to be producing more volume, and we're going to be getting into a different stage. But yeah, I think we have so much uniqueness. Firstly, like, we're a land that's abundant with crop and you know, and grain. You know, grain and timber is what we've got, you know, on our earth. And you know, when you think about what do you need to make whiskey? Oh yeah, grain and timber. We're going to be okay. And you know, you look from that, but then we've got such a great industry, I think, from you know, such a strong brewing industry that has, you know, that's feeding in and going to be continuing to grow. And then we get to sort of walk in the shadows of what the wine industry has done and showed success and growth, and what support and export growth and building brand wine Australia and brand wine, you know, Tassie to South Australia and Western Australia. Like that's kind of where I honestly see all of our spirits sort of going. And, you know, you take that and all of a sudden we're making exceptional spirits, and then our climate is giving us whiskey that is, you know, matured at almost twice the rate of what we're seeing in Scotland. It's a really big advantage, massive advantage. And, you know, I think one of the ones, you know, in Australia that's probably flying the flag the most, and trying to explain to the world what Australian whiskey is Starward over in the States. And it's a really positive, it's a big thing to be able to talk to. Everyone knows of Australia, of, you know, the white sunny, you know, white golden beaches and shrimp on a barbie, and it's a hot, beautiful climate. And you know, we're associating that now with great whiskey because we're getting that much greater maturation that we're seeing. So, man, there's a lot of strings to the bow, I suppose. It's but I think the climate in particular, but also we're massive. You know, we're making whiskey here in Northern Rivers. You know, I've got sweat dripping off me, and it's at, you know, 8:30 at night. You know, to Tasmania, to, to North Queensland, to Adelaide. We've got such variety of climate and terroir on this land that that environmental stamp is also what I think we're going to start to see more come to life. And that's what we lean into, We've got tropical, humid climate, a real rainforest and coastal sea air influence. That's what's making our whiskey really unique, as apart from, the actual, a few other things that go into it. But that environmental stamp, man, that's and that's where everyone's doing well, I think, in telling their own story. And customers love that.
Do you think then, like we look to Scotland for that tradition and that it's almost stoic approach to whiskey? That's how it is. It's how it's always been. They know it. They invented it.
Yeah.
Do you think our size and the fact that we do have Queensland, Tassie, Northern Territory, WA, all these different places with such different climates and different challenges, do you think that helps or hinders our establishment of tradition?
Well, I don't know if we have to kind
Will
of.
we get tradition?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know. Do we want tradition? Is probably, we're a land of rogues and and lobe snatchers. That's sort of
rebel.
We're rebels, and you even look to that. You're like, our whiskey laws and what says that, we partner with Stone and Wood. They brew our beer or our wort for us to make our whiskey. I can tell you right now, in Scotland, because of those, I don't want to use the word shackles, but that's such rich traditions that they have. That means that they're going to be really set in their ways. Scotland's actually having got the opposite challenge now, which is how do they become as innovative of what's going on in the world of whiskey? They're looking to places like us and various other countries and going, are we going to get left behind? So I think for us, it's like, look, we talk about it, before you've got to walk before you run. There's a lot of things in whiskey making process, which, you could use the word tradition around, which is, proper processes, ways, and you got to understand the rules to break the rules in a way. And I think for that, it's important to get the fundamentals right. But I don't think we have to be shackled to, I don't want to produce a Scottish style of whiskey or, to be known for that. Like, we want to be known as, Cape Byron, that's Byron-based subtropical Australian rainforest whiskey, and it's exceptional, or to whichever other state around. So I think the modern whiskey drink is also looking for that. The modern whiskey drink is changing a lot. I love my traditional single malts, but I also like different ones and for different occasions as well. And there's going to be there's so much discovery that's happening, I think, in it. So it's sort of I think we should embrace the road. Embrace the road. Could be a new release, Crafty. I can see it now.
Embrace the road.
There's artwork in that. There's definitely artwork in that. So embracing the road, off the top of your head, is there something or someone in Australia that you've seen that's doing something that you just went, holy fuck, that shouldn't work, but it does? Or that is weird as hell, good on you for having a crack at it, but it's not quite my...
I think...
What's your interest?
There's probably the thing that I love is innovation and creating and pushing boundaries. I think we probably where I look at about where's going to be some breakthroughs, and it hasn't, in my mind, I haven't tasted any whiskies that I've been fallen in love with, but I think it's going to be through exploration of different woods in Australia and for maturation. I see, there's been a lot of variations of red gums, things like that the whiskies are interesting. Don't get me wrong. There you go. I haven't actually tasted that one yet.
So that's for those listening at home rather than watching, I'm holding up the backwards red gum smoke.
Brilliant.
There you go. I actually haven't had that one either, so I don't know what it's like.
You're about to.
I'm about to. Once I finish
We're
this.
about to. Can you pass it through the screen for me? Where's smell-o-vision?
Yep, grab it.
Like, you know, where you look to it, in Scotland, they didn't have a lot of trees, but they had a lot of peat, you know, and that was that's how they were boiling their billies, keeping their houses warm, and that was their heat source. In Australia, we have an abundance of timber and various forms of incredible timbers. So I think, like, if I'm fast forwarding to like 10 years time, I think we're going to see a category of Australian whiskey that's really kind of creating some uniqueness through exploration of timbers. Now, whether that's just through maturation, whether that's through smoking, you know, that's the side of things, because the world hasn't seen it before. Like, I'll tell you something we've done. Cost us a bloody arm and a leg, but it was brilliant. So we farm macadamias, and we have to remove trees for inter-row to let we practice regenerative farming. And there's a mate of mine. He loves American barbecue. He cooks. That's his business. He's like, Eddie, have you ever tried macadamia timber for smoking? And anyway, so he cooked up. We had a feast. We were drinking beers and whiskeys, and it was just sensational. So we aged, air dried some macadamia logs for about 2 years, and then shipped them to our maltster at Voyager, and used that macadamia timber to smoke our malt in the malting process, not after. I'm a big believer, like true smoke maltings, you've got to take it from green malt and get that smoke all the way through. And man, it's fucking rock and roll. You know, it's sensational. And you know, I've sent Jim stuff, and you know, that was the stuff. You know what Jim did with Optimore is, like, you know, it'd never been done before. You know, because they were held onto those traditions. Like Jim was a guy, he started using wine casks. He was using sherry casks at a time where it was almost getting shunned for doing it. You know, this was so long ago in the Scotch industry. You know, and he used to get, you know, he told me stories like, you know, they go, Jim, mate, you've lost it. You know, when he's using Chateau de Chem, Chateau Latour casks, you know, and in Scotland at that time, it's tradition. No, you use bourbon, you use the max amount of time, and you use sherry, and that's it. You know, this is Scotch whiskey. And Jim's like, well, no, I want to go where no whiskey's gone before. And, you know, he did that through cask exploration, and he broke grounds through that. And all of a sudden you see all these other great distilleries in Scotland taking onto it, because customers love that. It's new, it's interesting, it's great whiskey. But then the story of Optimore, you know, he went to the maltsters about, you know, putting, you know, rather than doing it over, you know, a sort of 12, 24-hour process, I want you to draw it down. I want you to lower down the temperature. We're going to be here for a while, boys. We're going to be here for days on end. You know, let's put some you know, more water on that fire. And what he did was, you know, they were going, Jim, we can't do this. We've never done it before. He's like, well, we're doing it. We're going there right now. You know, and so I think it's okay, like, to be bold, you know, and you know, don't know, geez, maybe it's going to be shit, or maybe it's going to be an interesting, but geez, it'll be a great tale. But you don't know if you're going to create something new. Like, if you're shackled by, I don't want to do it because someone might think it's you know, can't be done. And yeah, I think that kind of goes back to just, there's a nice little sort of Australian character around that of, you know, of pushing boundaries, of, you know, wanting to sort of really kind of go where no spirit's gone before. So, man, I think we're in for some exciting stuff, I reckon, in the native, or in the timber space in particular.
Yeah. So on that issue, Ian has comments that Scotland and possibly bourbons may have to change some guidelines for what woods can be used for maturation, with issues of sustainability and climate changes.
And potential change of the regulations in America as well.
I reckon it's a legacy for bourbon anyway.
Yeah.
That's something that they're going to have to think about.
Which then obviously impacts the entire Scotch industry. That will be very interesting to see how that plays out.
We're already
implications.
We're already seeing now the rise of American whiskey, not bourbon, and you know, the rules on those. I don't know if you guys know, but it's like I'm pretty sure like the minimum age it's got to be in a barrel, something like a year or a month even. It is so low.
Lord Smeg has actually commented on that exact thing. So a good example of this is the US. What was the quite stated industry has been shaken up by the likes of Westwood,
Yep.
and even MGP in terms of how to innovate with huge volumes.
And I think it comes down to like it's got to be great spirit. It's got to be great whiskey. And you know, I've drunk Westwoods before, and it's great whiskey. You know, like it's you know,
Westwood.
Yeah.
I always get the two mixed up.
Yeah.
Westwood or Westwood?
They both come so close to
I
each
know.
other.
I think a few more whiskeys you can say them at the same time and get away with it.
And nobody cares. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually don't know which one it is. Is it the Westwood best whiskey cask? Sorry, the stout cask. Westwood
did the stout.
I was trying to see whether I could see it over there, but the stout cask of the Westwood is very, very nice.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And you know, and I can guarantee you, like, you know, the traditions of bourbon industry and Scott, they're looking to that going, holy shit, look at this innovation, but also customers are loving it. Drinkers are fucking engaging with it. It's new and exciting and it's great juice, you know, it's great whiskey. So yeah, I think it does put pressure on some of those things, and that's where some change, you know, the bourbon industry is so heavily tied to, you know, the forestry industry, you know, it's in there in the law, it's got to be virgin American oak, you know, they're so highly regulated around that. And it's also was a good thing, it protects that, you know, so it also creates a massive influx of different casks. And that's my little pooch Isla, by the way. She's she's had it. Yeah, I'll get her up. She's it was either going to be whiskey or Isla. So she's had it though. She's like, Dad, shut up.
Yeah.
I've heard this story before. I'm out.
Yeah.
You've got to call the Lowlands.
Oh, good. That'll be the next one. Well, it was either going to be Jude or Lowlands for our firstborn, and I couldn't get Lowlands over there. I don't know why.
You lost out.
Yeah, it was an uphill battle. I'll give you that much.
Hey, a question I want to ask is, so you've just you're about to release, I think, or you've just released your first. Wine cask, not wine cask, but Avonia casks.
Yeah.
So your relationship with winemakers, you already got that with your Chardonnay release, and now you got the Avonia. So you can see there's a real symbiotic relationship between the two. Tell us about the new release. What's the? And we actually had a taste. The Whiskey List did an online tasting.
Ah, cool.
And we tasted it, and the Avonia cask was. Holy crap! That is really interesting. So
that would have been a while ago. I think that would have been probably at least a year ago now. Or...
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah,
well, it's sold out. So there's no point in talking about it anyway.
It's already released.
Yeah, the Avonia card. It's on the website there. $149.99. Sold out. Out of stock.
Is that on?
There's no more.
There you go. No, I think we released it. So we released the Avonia on Monday, so is when that goes live, which is something we're pretty bloody excited about. So, you know, for us, all of our whiskey, actually about 90% of our whiskey goes directly into ex-bourbon casks. That's kind of our initial policy. You know, we go into those predominantly Heaven Hill casks, splattering of some others, and we do that. And this is really kind of setting the flavor profile and kind of stuff from Jim, you know, which is the whiskeys needs to get some foundational characters. It needs to learn to walk and talk, you know, before it can start to run. So that whiskey for us and that bourbon cask maturation is so important to the character of our whiskey. But in the early days, we really wanted to experiment and explore a lot of different casks. In particular, like, you know, we've talked about what have we got in Australia? We've got, you know, barley and timber, but we've also got this little thing called a wine industry, and I think we make some pretty good stuff, you know, small maybe. So, you know, we get access to incredible casks. And even though we're going mainly into bourbon, we also get the opportunity to explore so many different varieties and wine casks and styles. And that's where, man, we get excited about that. So we look at wine casks a bit differently. And again, it's really kind of overlapping with our climate. So for instance, if we put our whiskey into, say red wine casks in our temperature, we would get too much extraction. We would get almost too much tannic quality coming out of that, and it's probably going to make for a bit of an unbalanced whiskey. So we've sort of really worked around with different wineries and winemakers and looking at different wine styles to looking at casks that are not going to over dominate our spirit. You know, we're looking for that marriage and spirit, and that's where, you know, our Chardonnay casks works so bloody well with our spirit in our climate. And we get those fresh dumped, but also we retoast as well. And that's going to be some future stuff after we've done our releases.
Just reading the notes on that, on the Chardonnay cask. So the palate exudes decadent notes of chocolate and hazelnut praline, laid over distinct characteristics of raisin, baked apples, and maple.
Oh, tell you what, you almost need a bit of like some violin in the background, maybe, or maybe a little bagpipe over the hill.
Oh,
you know, that'd be. I'm crying. There's a tear.
And
who wrote that? Who wrote that?
Poetry. And then if we go to the Boynia cask, again, murdered it. Characteristics of stewed apple and spice, buttered croissant, mocha, papaya, and charred peach.
I'm hungry.
Sweetie, did you say that you were releasing that on Monday?
So
on Monday.
It's not. Okay. It's just not out.
No,
yet.
so you can go. So we have our original, which is we want to be able to consistently release that, you know, and it's not, we're not a huge distillery, but we want to we plan that we want to be able to keep that one sort of the original there and available to a limited amount of, we obviously we don't have volumes to go everywhere. But then we do our limited release, and it's kind of the wine cask exploration. So you get the Chardonnay first, and then this now is our Viognier cask release. And we worked with these,
for those playing at home, I've just posted the link directly to that into the show notes chat. There is a sign up for the waiting list directly on the website there for that. So you can put in your email address, tick the box to get notified as soon as, I guess, you hit the switch and put the stock in there.
Yeah. So what we do is we give everyone that gets on there the first 24 hours once we launch it. And then, you know, that's sort of doing the work to get there. And then we sort of broaden it out afterwards. But it's bloody exciting. Like, you know, we've got such an incredible industry in the wine to look to. So a Viognier style of wine is generally not a heavily oaked wine, especially like, so Inkwell Wines, the crew in the McLaren Vale, which we source these from. We keep sending him bottles of whiskey, trying to get a few more casks out of him. If he's listening, come on, send him some more. But it's got this great minerality, you know, really kind of, there's some tropical fruit characters. You're going to get apricot and peach in there, but then it's lightly oaked. So it's really quite more of a delicate approach in that cask. So you can see the Chardonnay, which is probably a little bit heavier in sort of oak profile. So the Viognier is really a little bit sort of lighter in that, but it's got all of those. And you think about it, like if we're using a wine cask, the winemakers that may have used those casks before, they're treating them very differently to us when we're doing whiskey. You know, they're keeping their wine in there 13-14% alcohol, and they're keeping it very, very much temperature controlled. You know, so the sort of, even though they're getting that oak contact, they're only wanting a little bit of oak contact, the kiss of oak, you know, the softness of it. And then we get the barrels to Byron Bay, and then we get our beautiful, you know, new make spirit. and in it goes. You know, we fill our casks on average about 57% alcohol. And it just rips that character out from the oak. You know, the first 6 to 8 months is all about extraction. And, you know, you're getting this huge depth of character. And, you know, anything that's had wine, you get this beautiful stewed fruit characters and raisins and, you know, these sort of almost barrel spices coming through as like, you know, maybe chocolatey or pastry-like characters. And, it's a bloody juicy, delicious whiskey. We're pretty excited by it. It's probably something we're not going to be doing much more, purely because you don't get too many oak Viogniers around, and casks are challenging. So we're really excited to put it out there.
A special one for the collection. Buy two. One
Absolutely.
Drink.
Buy two. Hey, buy a case. You know, who am I? I wouldn't tell you to stop it. As long as you drink it. There's nothing I hate more. And I'm like, you know, like, you know, when you see whiskey, you know, and whiskey for me, like spirits and great food or wine, you know, should be shared, you know, and should be celebrated in those moments. But, you know, whiskey, an unopened whiskey bottle is stories untold. You know, like
every bottle behind me here is open.
There you go. Look at the amount of stories that have been told just through that. I'm putting the fan on. It's too warm here. There'll be ice in the whiskey before you know it. You know.
If I put that fan on, we'll blow away. So I'm not going to do that.
Hey, a question I've got is: so when you go to a winemaker and you say, "Your wine, love your wine," I just love the flavors, the complexity, everything else. I want to take your cask and I want to take it away and I want to burn it. I want to toast it, and then I want to put my spirit in. Do the winemakers that you talk to, do they look at you horrified with what you want to do, or they,
they're pretty much. They'll tell you, oh yeah, I'll tell you where you can go, you know, and it's not going to be getting my cask. They're, you know, like great winemakers, they spend a mozza on these barrels, and they've spent so much energy to source the style of oak that they want. So when barrels are at their best, you know, even after, you know, Chardonnay is a great example. What we want is, what happens in winemaking is, this is in general, is for Chardonnay cask, they'll use it maybe 3, maybe 4 times, you know, for maturation, and that's always depending on how long they're having it on oak and everything for. But then a Chardonnay cask becomes a red wine cask, you know, and they're going to use it in different things, you know, because in winemaking they're going to use those things until it's gone. Like that's a lot of money that they've spent on these great casks. So for us, not only do we have to convince the winemakers to not get extra use out of that, but hey, why don't you sell it to us and we'll take a few casks off your hand. And it comes down to relationships, and I suppose for them, they want to know that the quality, I suppose for everything that they do, that it's going to be kind of respected and treated right, you know, and that comes from relationships, and also I suppose we get to show that through who we are and the spirits that we make, and you know, through our reputation, and that sort of helps. But there's a bit of convincing, but you know, it's just network. Like, man, I'm constantly looking for good casks, and look, there's a lot of middlemen in the industry, which is great, but you know, what we're looking to do is really strike up those really great relationships, and you know, and to keep that, because you know, they've created, and they've held that cask in their possession. You know, they want to see that it's gone to a good place, and you know, there's now a new life getting used to it. And we send the winemakers bottles of whiskey and stuff, and they love it. So it's it's nice when they get to sort of see the fruits of sort of the labor that they put into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very,
now
very cool.
we had an interesting comment. Actually, before I circle back up, I'm going to go with another one that just came in right now. Eddie mentioned his love for Stone and Wood. Any thoughts on collab with their old barrels?
Bloody good question.
You haven't been sniffing around our barrel house, Lord Smeg, have you, mate?
We have flies everywhere.
There might be. It's actually probably going to be next year, and one of my favorite beers that the guys make, and when the founders, it's since sold to Lion. It's all still some great people, and great beer is getting made there, and very much still community focused. But they used to do this yearly brew, and it was called the Stone Beer, and then they created this festival around it, and Brad brought this thing to life, and there was an old sort of traditional ways of making beer, and they used to heat up volcanic rocks, and they'd use those as the heat source, drop them in the pot, and you could imagine those boiling hot volcanic rocks, and then it's going to cook that sort of malt, so you get extra toasted roasted characters, and that's kind of been the birth of Stone Beer. And then over iterations, they'll age that Stone Beer in casks, bourbons to this and that. And so we may have done our own little trades and swaps and things here and there. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some Stone Beer releases coming out maybe towards, what are we, the end of next year, perhaps.
Interesting. Stay tuned. Jump on the mailing list.
Jump on the indeed.
There you go. We got an emoji. We've got. It's a happy face.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
it's like an eggplant to me. But anyway, carry on.
What are they sending you, Crafty? Was that a personal one, or what's happening? I didn't see that pop up.
He gets a lot of personal emojis.
Yeah. It's someone who thinks you're an aubergine, you're an eggplant.
It's not me. It's not me.
That's why I don't answer your
I
messages.
get spam.
Spam.
Anyway, carry on.
Anyway, Ian Bruce, do you ever use X wine cask, then the winery takes it back, then after they've reused it, you get it back at the distillery?
That sounds familiar.
Are you doing a reciprocal?
It's funny. Wineries not so much. Like, I think winemakers are so, the oak to them is so precious from the moment that it's, that virgin toasted oak, and look, very different. Like, you look in bourbon casks, they char the buggery out of those things, and then then they've got high strength spirit that's gone into them for a long time. So very different environment to wine. So, with wine casks in general, they're looking for that complexity more through toasting. They don't want too much oak interaction for it, because wine's delicate. It's so aromatic. You don't want it to be overly oak. And also they're putting it in those temperatures that they're doing. So, once they're they're done with it, essentially, the old analogy is a good way of looking at it is a tea bag. You can use it so many times, and then it starts to dilute a little bit. And also the winemakers love it. Maybe it's not the virgin piece that they like at the start, but it's the second and the third fills that they're going to get their best results from. But after a while, it's not going to be used for that style. They might still use it for other things, but when we've got our spirit into it, it rips all the rest of it out. It is. And then so there's not as much character left into it. Look, I'm not sure if there has been. Like, man, I'm sure there has to be. It's a great idea anyway. It's going to be a great story if it does come to life. But I think generally winemakers would be after more of the softer oak profile rather than Imagine a big Shiraz aged in a whiskey barrel. Jeez, it'd blow your head off. It'd be good fun.
Oh,
it'd be high ABV.
It would.
Bloody high. Yeah.
Now, a really
Jenkins Creek has
there are wine cask. Sorry, there are whiskey cask wines.
Yeah.
Certainly, I have seen, but they are few and far between.
Yeah, they're pretty standout.
But then, how reciprocal that is.
Yeah, I imagine it's a one-way traffic, that one.
Probably, yes.
Yeah. I think they're reusing them, and what's so interesting, and I think this is also, talk about the industry evolving, where I was so excited the day I heard that Casella Wines was getting into the distilling game with Morris, and they did it in such a way that they bought a fortified distillery, and they come from a wine background. Like, what I think that's going to be something in the future of us distillers we're going to see more of. Those, the wine producers that have essentially have all their sort of cask stores locked up. It makes sense that they could go and supply them themselves, and they've just got such a great library of fortifieds to use. And as distillers, we work hard to try to see what else falls off the back of a truck from various different fortified casks, and beg, borrow, and steal where possible. But
so we don't need the wineries to start distilling and keep the barrel themselves.
No, stick to wine.
We don't need that. That would be a bad idea.
We'll meet at the pub between the distillery and the wineries, and we'll share some drinks.
Now, talking about going back to innovation and smoke, I thought this was a great comment that came in from Mark Springle. I smoked some red gum over water and then froze it into ice cubes, and it adds a smoky flavour.
I smoked some red
gum over
water. Yeah. So smoked some red gum over water, froze it into the ice. So created his own smoke infusion.
Yeah.
Dropped a little ice cube in his whiskey of his choosing, and then that I think that is personal innovation, really.
Yeah.
And
the smoky water.
Adding a smoky water to your whiskey.
Yeah.
I can tell you in Byron Bay, it wouldn't be red gum that they're smoking into their ice cubes. The other things, but it's like you see that used in like great cocktail bars as well, and when they're bringing smoke into things, if you get yourself a stave, and a wine stave or a whiskey stave or something, and if you get a chef's deep purple ice, I like it. All the colors of the rainbow, and you sort of get a chef's torch and you set that on fire, then you put a glass over the top. If you're making an old fashioned, what a great, you're going to get these smoky aromas and all of that stuff. I think smoke as a flavor is such a beautiful, such a great character, to add to it.
And as you're saying, with all the different types of timber that we have available to us in Australia, how we can utilize those. Maybe we can't make a barrel out of it, but maybe we can smoke some malt with it and infuse that flavor in a different way.
Didn't Archie Rose do something a few years ago with smoky water, and it was smoked in a pizza oven?
Yes,
which was next door to Archie Rose.
It did. They did. I'm struggling to remember what that was now, but I think it was a red gum.
Yeah. The water.
They smoked the water in the pizza oven next door, and then used that as part of the distillation process, or part of the
breaking the whiskey down.
Breaking whiskey down.
It was not a big release, I don't think.
No.
It didn't quite work, but
sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, a lot of work.
It sounds like a good story. It's been a good yarn. And it's funny, right? You can get you think about it. If we've got, this bottle of whiskey here, how do we get smoke character into that? And the traditional way, and this is in sort of my from a flavor belief, the best way to do it is in the actual malting process. So, if you do it, and the good way to look at it, so in the malting process, you start with green malt. You pour water over it, and it thinks it's out in nature, and it's going, great, I got to wake up, I'm going to start growing shoots, and all these sort of enzymes and changes. And it's in that process, after you've got it and it's germinated, that you then need to reduce the water content out from that green malt. And that's the malting process. You bring heat, and in that heat, you can either use a non smoke source, just hot air, or you would use a smoke source. And that's it. But it's in that process when it's wet and it's that green malt that it may be a good analogy. If you're slow roasting a leg of lamb or smoking a leg of lamb, you can either do it you can taste the difference. If you did a 12-hour and it was properly smoked all the way through, great heat source, versus you cooked a leg of lamb and then you poured smoke over it at the end, you're going to get different levels of penetration of that smoke. So what happens is, properly sort of smoked or peat smoked barley is that it actually gets right through the husk and into the heart of it, and I think it's, but that's where you want that really deep, intense smoke for it, but then there's going to be, other than that, there's nothing to say you can't, smoke, infuse smoke into your water. Part of that you might be interesting. Like, to me, my sort of thought to go to, it's probably going to be a bit of an acrid, sharp smoke rather than a bit more of a mellow. But there's nothing, and that's, geez, I can tell you, we're going to see it. We're going to see all forms of different, like, how do you bring layers and elements of those smoky characters into spirits? And smoke's polarizing. People either love peated whiskey or hate it, but people that like peated whiskey are going to like smoky styles of whiskey, and
then
exploring.
You've got the difference between a peated whiskey and a smoked whiskey. They are two different things as well. Certainly.
So we've actually just released. We did an exclusive with the whiskey list. It went live yesterday. I tell you what, we haven't released a new whiskey in 12 months, and we've dropped them both in 1 week. We're always, why not? Just before the madness of Christmas. But that for us, so we produce, it's about 90% unpeated and 10% peated. And we import Scottish peated malt from Simpson's Maltings. We don't have, kind of the level of sort of quality in my mind of peat bogs and actually peat character of the style of whiskey that we wanted to create in Australia yet. We're starting to see maltsters that are doing that now, that are set up for that, and we're going to start to see that grow. And that's my goal and dream, is to have pure Australian peated barley at the level of quality of what Scottish peated barley is. So we import that, and man, it's just sensational, beautiful. It's like sweet ham, sweet smoke, delicate, and it's elegant. It's a really elegant spirit as well. But we just released it. So we did we only did, I think, 350 odd bottles. So we selected a single retoasted Chardonnay cask. So it held bourbon then into retoasted Chardonnay cask for over 12 months to finish. And then it's the first ever release of anything that is peated from our distillery. And we brought in 30% of our bourbon peated single malt whiskey. So it's kind of shows this very soft, elegant approach, softer style for peated. Like, we will release our peated whiskey, and it's going to be big and bold and delicious. I think it's up on the whiskey list on their website.
So for those playing at home, I have just posted it into the chat, the direct link to it. It is on the whiskey.com.au, and the link is in the chats. I'm just trying to bring up the bottle on the brand, but of course, technology screws me.
You're IT. You're technology.
It may be my job, but it's still, it does things that just. There we go. That's
look at that. Peated Chardonnay. There you go.
Yeah. Now, so that is a special release on the whiskey list. Now, their description says it is the first ever special release from Cape Byron, and also
violins in the background. Come on, let's get it properly. Yeah.
There's our. Hold on. Do I have some background music here? Hold on. Hold on.
Yeah, come on. I want to let's set the scene. People are drinking whiskey.
Think purple.
Oh, now we're talking.
There's some background music. So the first ever special release from Cape Byron, and also the first over 50%. It's a beauty.
No, you need to do. Who's the Negro singer with the really deep voice? Anyway,
I've got to.
Like some Marvin Gaye, maybe some make love to it.
What about her?
Real? Oh, you could be Marvin Gaye. Yeah, could be. Yeah.
I'm not sure whether that'll work.
What, Feeding Ducks?
It's not called Feeding Ducks. It's called Night Driving. Where the fuck is? Oh, Feeding Ducks. Hold on. Here we go. Yeah, there we are. I'll put that on. Right. This whiskey was developed by Cape Byron team specifically for the whiskey list, whiskey lovers, and it is fantastic. The majority is from unpeated bourbon cask, finished in Chardonnay cask, but there's a choice amount of peated bourbon cask married into it to give it earthiness and complexity.
That's not sexy at all.
That's not as sexy as what I thought. Yeah.
Slow it down.
All right.
Yeah.
Way you go.
Moving right along.
To be honest, I think from here on out, any tasting note should be read with some, sexy music in the background. It just elevates it,
I'll find some sexy music. Look, this is the first time we've ever used background music on the show.
I think we're starting something. I think, the distilleries need to choose their background music for tasting notes to be read to.
I have limited options.
Yeah.
I'm not glasses. I can't do it.
You can't see anything.
You can't read it. He left his Coke bottles at home.
We haven't
Now
seen
talking about
Urkel for a while.
But talking about smoke and infusion and through smoke juice,
my bottle up.
because
Crafty, tell us.
it is a good example of smoking in the malting process. So that this was a collaboration with
Voyager.
Slightly different.
So correct me.
Not in the malting process.
When did you do it?
Post malting.
Post malt.
So it was warm.
Post malt.
We've just done another batch earlier in the year, but it was warm smoked Voyager craft malt, and it was cooperage wood shavings wine.
Wow.
So smoked juice, and it's in refill casks. And it's juicy, fruity with a light smoke through the back. So something.
How good is that?
Eddie, you try different things.
Yeah.
Some are
Shed smells like bacon balls when we're.
I remember I was with you with you guys, Todd and Crafty. First time I tried Peter Bignell's what was it? The burnout?
Bogan burnout.
Yeah.
Oh, now we're talking smoke. That's at the next level.
The infamous Bogan burnout.
That is rock and roll. That stuff is wild.
The thing to say about Bogan burnout though is it gets airborne. So you don't have to drink it.
No.
Someone can be drinking it in the bar right down the other end, and you start to go, what am I getting in my mouth? Where did that come from?
Where did that rubber come from?
And I think that's the beauty of smoked whiskey, or peated whiskey. We're talking smoke and peated and all of those. Like for me, I drink a lot more unpeated than I would peated. Peated for me is in a time and place, and when I'm outdoors, I like a peated whiskey. Like if I'm out camping or something like that, or when you kind of feel like you need a bit more energy, or that certain times. And I think that that smoke gives you such character, it gives you this sort of big energy about it too. But it's like, oh man, and the levels, you've got soft, sweet smoke and one of my actually probably
Bogan burnout.
Yeah. There's Bogan burnout. That'll rip you a new one. Yeah.
What's his next one's big hot smoking barrel or something, where he smoked the whole barrel.
Is that how good?
Yeah.
I'll tell you my
burnout. It's pretty nasty stuff.
Oh,
he throws a bit of cheap shit in there, and then just make the whole smoky action.
It's grey in colour.
maybe it's infused. It's filtered through the sheep shit, I think. Yeah. So one of my most memorable whiskeys is one of Jim's, and I've still got a quarter of a bottle. That's the one I'm like, the day that bottle dies, I'll have a tear. And it was one of his Octomore releases. It's Octomore Commerce 4.1. And there's as much as the story as well as how sensational the whiskey is. And, for those that haven't drunk Octomore, you would have heard of it. And it's like the heavyweight of the whiskey well, but it's almost the whiskey that shouldn't work. It's like the world's most heavily peated whiskey, and it's massive, yet it's still very elegant as well. You know, there's such beauty to that whiskey. And the story of Octomore Commerce and the way Jim tells it, it's not a whiskey, it's a tale, it's a love story of this big brute of an Isla man, you know, a man cut from stone and timber, and, you know, a beard, you know, redder than Redbeard's beard, and he meets and falls in love with this delicate French lass. And, you know, the story is of Octomore being aged in a Sauterne cask, a French, you know, a French sweet white wine cask. And it is fucking beautiful, you know, romantic, but just, I think that for me is, you know, whiskey has romance and should take you to a certain place. But it's also, the flavor is something that just sort of stops you in your tracks. And it's a whiskey that shouldn't work. It's so big and bold, yet so elegant and sweet. And, you know, it's just, you know, when those two big worlds can collide, it's, yeah, I'll be very sad the day that bottle goes. Maybe there's some collectors out there that'll do me a deal.
Now, I'm sorry, the rain has just started, so you may be able to. The cricket has stopped. The cricket stopped chirping,
which means he's on the roof. He's outside.
Getting flooded by the fucking rain.
Yeah, exactly.
He's at it.
So now you can hear the rain. Well, we can hear the rain. I don't know anybody else.
We can hear anything apart from the rain.
But the beauty of having a low roof in a shitty shed.
It's not too bad. We can, a soft pattern.
That's why I have so much alcohol to soften the blow.
Yes.
Now, do we have any other questions from the audience to come in? There have been quite a few questions. I think I've gotten through all of them. I did quite like the William Rules. Where's my mouse gone? Shite. There it is. I found it. Deep Purple Eyes.
Call it Deep Purple Eyes. I like that.
Yeah. Smoke on the water.
There could be. Maybe we might need some hemp water to cut the whiskey. That'll get things going.
Do you? I mean, there are hemp gins.
Yeah.
There's a few hemp gins out there. I do happen to have one on the shelf there somewhere. Do you think hemp is something we could introduce into whiskey?
Why not? You
Would
know,
that work as a smoky flavor?
Yeah, you could maybe, you know, hey, from smoking it, you know, and bring it in there. It's funny. There's the world, the new generation of drinkers is changing, and in particular, there's like, you know, a guy was telling me about this the other week in the States. There's this whole new rise of people drinking sort of CBD and THC drinks, you know, of like infused. So there's no alcohol in them, but they're giving you those effects and stuff. And it's going to be interesting. I reckon there might maybe be some hybridy pieces of, you know, whiskey or spirit, you know, spirit combined ones. And it's an interesting one. You know, we know, and we can see it now, you know, the generations are changing. Our drinking culture is changing so much. Like what we're doing here and talking about is very much premium spirits that should be enjoyed and shared. And I don't think that changes, but, you know, the culture of drinking, and I think there's more going to be, you know, start to see more appreciation rather than just consumption, you know, which is a good thing. But it's going to be an interesting one, you know, like what does a new drinker that's sort of first emerging now? And I can tell you probably from when we started having our first drinks, you know, I think my first ever drink was a Woodstock 440 ml, big and beautiful, you know, that was but it's definitely changing a lot.
Yeah,
I think for the better too.
My early drinking was with a lot of very bad men. Jim, Johnny, Jack, Captain Morgan.
The three white.
They were very, very bad men, and I have very few memories of them.
Named Wilson.
But I know they were bad.
The guy called Wilson.
Mate, I'll tell you one of my most brutal. When I was working in this bar, we used to pour a shot, and when people used to go, "I want your strongest shot," and you go, "Oh yeah, here he goes," and we used to call it was called Three Wise Men on Acid. And it was Johnny Walker, Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, and Absinthe. And it was rocket fuel. Like, you can imagine it. But you just reminded me when you were going through the Wise Men. Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
I don't condone Three Wise Men on Acid, by the way. You know, we've got Three Wise Men there.
Sounds like a very bad idea.
Yeah.
You're going to have a bad time after that one.
Yeah.
Well, so with the rain, also I've noticed that our internet's probably going to cut out at any moment now because the pits are going to fill up with water. Yay! The joy of Australian telecommunications. So before we actually get cut off, I'm going to say thank you very much for joining us. It's been wonderful chatting with you. Thank you to everyone for their comments. We've got Mark Springle there. Thanks, Ben. Thank you for a great evening. So we've got the latest release, which is now out on the whiskey list, which I've shared the link for in the chat. The whiskey list exclusive. We've got the new one coming out. When's that coming out? Monday.
So Viognier Cast lands Monday, and we are also doing a rather than Black Friday, we're calling it Green Friday. So we've actually got a special release. So we're doing some discount that does include. We're not any of our limited release, but the OG you can get up to 20% off. Plus, we do a donation from every order to the wildlife, to the local wildlife hospital, so you can sort of feel good about buying your booze.
Absolutely. Really cool. Now, I do just have to because I have to throw it up there. The Green Friday artwork for everyone to see.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. So, yep, 20% off, and $2 per order is donated to the Byron Wildlife Hospital. Look at the echidna. He's almost smiling.
He is. Well, he's had a bottle of Mac. He's having the time of his life.
He's having the time of his life.
He's doing something for that bottle of Mac.
He's very appreciative of the bottle.
He's very appreciative of the bottle.
Koala's looking on with surprise, disgust, and envy.
That bloody echidna, he's at it again. Give him a sniff of Mac, and every time.
Just a comment. Adding to that, totally unrelated. I was on the web today, and there was these wildlife photographs. Right, it's a huge competition in the world, and the one that won was a kangaroo, and the kangaroo is holding his arms like this, and it's like he's got an air guitar. He's doing the whole.
Oh, you're kidding me!
Air guitar thing.
I've seen that.
Have you?
How good is that?
I pissed myself with laughter because.
Yep.
You found it?
I found
it. Put it up. Put it up.
He's working on it.
And if you...
It's a good thing we got a good IT guy here.
Yeah.
I tell you.
You got to see this because it will make you piss yourself.
All right. So this one... And... All right, here we go. It's uploading. Patience. There we go.
Oh, my God. Look at that. He's leaning in.
He's having a good old scratch.
That's is that not an air guitar stunts or what?
That is brilliant.
Yeah, rock out.
Either that or he's had too much Mac.
he's looking for his bottle. He's going, hang on. I left it in
It's stuck in his pocket. No, someone's pushed it.
I looked at
it. I'm a boy.
Oh, brilliant.
Comment from Garth. David NK gave me my first taste of the comments. I hunted down a bottle after that. Crafty, can we make something happen?
Yeah.
Garth,
you can send me that. I'll send you my address, Garth, and you can send me that bottle of commerce. That'd be great if you wouldn't mind. It's just there's. Man, if you guys have ever had the opportunity of doing an Octomore tasting, it is just, man, wild, the flavor profiles that are coming through on those. But some of those earlier releases, just sensational. But definitely not an everyday drinker. There you go.
Garth will be in touch. Excellent. You can trust Garth. He'll hit you up.
Yeah.
thank you everyone for joining us. Please jump on to capebyrondistillery.com, jump on to the whiskey list and grab that exclusive release. Jump on Monday to get the new cast release, and stay tuned because we'll be back on the 7th. The 7th with King Lake.
With King Lake.
Brilliant.
Who I'm a huge fan of. So it'll be great to have a chat with them on the 7th. Thank you.
Our second favourite Australian distillery.
So, who's our first favourite?
I don't know. But
we won't.
Crafty number one.
I mean, look, Crafty goes without saying, really.
Why do you think I'm sitting at the back of the bus?
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you all again. Please like and subscribe and all those things. Stay tuned for a word from our sponsors.